In this lesson, you will solve problems using the percent proportion. In a percent proportion, one ratio compares a part to the whole. The other ratio is the equivalent percent written as a fraction with the denominator of 100. For example, 3/5 equals 60 over 100, because percent means out of 100. Right here in this box, you'll want to make sure to have this in your notes. This is the percent proportion recipe, as I like to call it. You're always going to write the percent over 100, and that's going to equal the part over the whole. And the key words to look for when identifying the part and whole is the word is and of. In our first example, we're going to find the percent. 22 is what percent of 110? What you want to do is start out by writing your percent proportion. And I always write the percent over 100. And in this particular problem, they don't tell us the percent. We don't know what it is because it says 22 is what percent. So I'm going to put a P in place of the percent. The reason why I use a P for the percent is because then I remember in the end to make sure and put a percent sign on my answer. This number right here is always going to be 100. And then it says 22 is what percent of 110? So 22 is the part, and 110 is the whole, because it says of 110. Now we're going to do just like we did in chapter 4. We're going to solve that proportion by using the cross products and making them equal to each other. P times 110 is 110p. That equals 22 times 100. When you multiply by 100, you're just moving the decimal 2 places to the right, so that's 2,200. Now to solve this equation, you're going to divide both sides by 110. $2,200 divided by 110 is 20. So I have P equals 20. Since I use the variable P, that reminds me that I want to write my answer as 20%. 22 is 20% of 110. You may want to pause the video and try the next one on your own. 17 is what percent of 68? Go ahead and set up your percent proportion. It's the percent over 100, and since we don't know the percent, I'm going to put a P. I always put that over 100. And then it's the part over the whole. So 17 is, that's the part, of 68, that's my whole. Now we go ahead and use the cross products. P times 68, 68p, equals 100 times 17, which is 1,700. Now divide both sides by 68. P equals 1,700 divided by 68. That is 25. And since I used my P as my variable, that reminds me I need to write the answer as a percent. That's 25%. The next example has us finding the part. We're going to use the same percent proportion. The percent over 100. And in this problem, they tell you that you have 80%. So 80 over 100 equals the part over the whole. What number is 80% of 500? The of 500 That's the whole amount. It's going to go on the bottom. And what number is 80% of 500? We don't know that part, so we are going to put that as a variable, and I'm just going to go ahead and use x. Now we're going to go ahead and use the cross products again. 100 times x is 100x. $100x equals 80 times 500. That's 40,000. Divide both sides by 100. When you take 40,000 divided by 100, you really have 400 divided by 1. So your answer is 400. You may want to pause the video and try the next one on your own. Start out by setting up a proportion. It's always the percent over 100, so 35% over 100. And then it says what number is 35% of 48? So 48 is your whole amount. That's going to go on the bottom. And we don't know what the part is, so that's going to be your variable. Set the cross products equal to each other. 100x equals 35 times 48. 35 times 48 is 1,680. Now you need to divide both sides by 100. Dividing by 100 is just moving the decimal 2 places to the left. So x is going to equal 16.8 or 16 and 8 tenths. All right, example 3 is finding the whole. 14 and 4 tenths is 32% of what number? Set up your proportion. Percent over 100 always. So 32 over 100. And then it says 14 and 4 tenths is 32% of what number? We don't know the whole this time, but we do know the part is 14.4 or 14 and 4 tenths. Now go ahead and solve it. 32x equals 14 and 4 tenths times 100. When you multiply by 100, you move the decimal 2 to the right. So 1,440. Now divide both sides by 32. And you get 45. So 14 and 4 tenths is 32% of 45. You can pause the video and try the next one on your own. Start out by setting up your proportion. 23 and 4 tenths is 30% of what number? You're going to put the percent over 100 always. And then the part over the whole. We don't know the whole because it says of what number? And the part is 23 and 4 tenths. Now solve the proportion. 30x equals 100 times 23 and 4 tenths. That's going to be 2,340. Now we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 30. end up with 78. Our next example has to do with percents greater than 100. Percents that are greater than 100 are bigger than one whole, because one whole is 100%. So 6 is what percent of 5? Go ahead and set up your percent proportion. We don't know the percent in this problem, so I'm going to put a P for the percent out of 100. And in this problem, our whole is 5 because it says of 5, and our part is 6. Some students will mix these two numbers up because they assume the small one goes on the top and the big one on the bottom, and that's not always the case. Sometimes your part is bigger than your whole, like in this case. Now go ahead and solve your proportion. 5p equals 600. Divide both sides by 5. 600 divided by 5 is 120. And since I have a p as my variable, that reminds me that I need to make sure to put a percent sign on my answer. 6 is 120% of 5. You may want to try these next two on your own. 12 is what percent of 6? We don't know the percent, so I'm going to put down p. That always goes over 100. And then 12 is what percent of 6? Since it says of 6, that means 6 is our whole, and 12 is our part. And then I'm going to just go ahead and write down the answer since we've done a whole bunch of these at this point. This will work out to be 200%. Next, find 175% of 18. The percent always goes over 100, so 175 over 100. And it says find 175% of 18. So 18, because it has that word of there, that's our whole, and we don't know our part. Now when you go ahead and use your cross products to solve the proportion, you end up getting 31.5, which makes sense that we end up with a number larger than what we started with because we're finding 175% of 18. 100% of 18 is 18, so 175% of 18 has got to be bigger than that. All right, our last example is a word problem. Carmela answered 23 questions correctly on her science test and received a grade of 92%. How many questions were on the test? One way you can solve this is by writing a percent proportion. The percent in this problem is 92%. That always is going to be placed over 100. And then the other piece of information we know is that she answered 23 questions correctly. So you have to ask yourself, is that the part or the whole? Well, if she answered 23 questions correctly, that's just the part that she got correct. We want to know how many were on the whole test, so your variable is going to be in the bottom. Now when we go to solve this, 92 times x is 92x, and 23 times 100 is 2,300. Divide both sides by 92. $2,300 divided by 92. That's going to be 25. There were 25 questions on the test.